the lost Caribbean sea was a captain mighty.
Hello and welcome back to Particular Pixels. I'm Xiaoling and this is my review of Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew. The next game from the developer Me, the team that brought us Shadow Tactics and Desperados 3 is finally here. Both of those games were excellent. I actually recently played through Desperados 3 and all of its DLC right before starting my playthrough of Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew, so it is nice to be able to make a fresh comparison between the two. How well does the game stack up to the previous games? Let's find out. The story takes place across a mysterious island chain known as the Lost Caribbean, which is under the control of the Inquisition, a group that kind of despises anything supernatural and hunts cursed pirates like you and your crew. You play as Aphia and are the navigator of a living ship by the name of the Red Marley, who is in search of her captains and is tasked with helping her and reviving all of her old crew. At the risk of spoilers, I am going to try to keep everything pretty vague. All the characters in this game are far more fleshed out than they have been in the previous games. They all have backstories, are fully voiced, interesting and quite quirky. I truly had some laugh out loud moments with some of the dialogue. To top things off, the voice acting is top notch all around. The story kept me invested all the way through to the end and I really enjoyed it. Visually, Shadow Gambit has a more cartoonish aesthetic than both Shadow Tactics and the more realistic Desperados 3. And it perfectly suits the theme of magic and cursed pirates in this alternate history of the golden age of piracy. The music is appropriate to the theme and the sound effects are great as well, adding to the atmosphere of the game. Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew is through and through exactly the same kind of game as Me's previous titles. There are a few changes, which I'll get into a little bit later, but for the most part, if you've played either of the other games, you know exactly what you're going to be getting into. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the games, they are tactical stealth strategy games in the same vein as the old Commandos Behind Enemy Lines series. The game is played from a 3D isometric perspective. For most missions, you control 3 crew members and are tasked with completing a number of different objectives before returning to your ship. The map is filled with various types of enemies, some stationary, others patrolling. All of them have view cones that can be seen. You need to navigate your team past them or take them out using the various abilities or the environment in order to complete your objectives. If you get detected, other enemies in the area will come to your location. If you get detected by certain alarm units, reinforcements will be called. Ideally, you want to remain stealthed, but it is, of course, not required. Each of your crew has a number of different abilities, and depending on your playstyle and the crew you've selected, your strategies are going to change. So you'll make your way through each situation looking for openings, environmental factors you can use to your advantage in order to take out the guards in your path. So that you can make your way to the objective. Each area provides its own challenges and puzzles to solve with your crew and the abilities available to you. You can queue up commands for each team member and execute them all simultaneously to take out several guards at once. This is in fact required for many sections and requires careful planning. It's very rewarding. You're encouraged to quick save a lot and experiment with different outcomes in these games, and it never really gets old. There is something just so satisfying about pulling off the perfect maneuver. That is the gist of it in a nutshell. Shadow Gambit makes a number of changes this time around, though, for those of you who have played the other games. I'll start off by saying that the quick save mechanic is actually built into the story this time, and there's an actual reason as to why it's possible to go back to earlier memories. It's pretty clever. I'm not going to spoil anything here. You'll need to discover that for yourself when you play through the campaign. While the previous games were, of course, large sandboxes in their own right, with many potential strategies and approaches on how you choose to tackle each of the levels. Once completed, you would move on to the next stage and so on and so forth until you reach the end of the game. In Shadow Gambit, there are a total of 8 islands that you will visit in your playthrough that vary in size and scope. However, the story missions and crew missions will have you revisit these locations at different times of the day and take place at different locations on these islands. So unlike Desperados, for example, you won't tactically make your way through the entire map, clearing all the enemies as you progress through it, but you will be doing that for smaller sections of the island before leaving, and then doing it again when you come back in another area. So it won't be replaying the same section over and over, at least not in the campaign, and as a result this will require that you learn to navigate new guard patterns in order to complete each of these specific missions. Each mission also allows you to choose from a number of different starting locations on each island, as well as having several options of portals through which you can extract after you have finished the mission. While there are some changes regarding the locations of enemies during story and crew missions when revisiting islands, for the most part the enemy locations remain much the same. As a result, the way the developers have changed the structure of the missions, runs can actually range from being quite short to relatively long depending on what you need to do, whereas in the other games doing any single level could take upwards of 2+ hours to systematically make your way through the stage. There are some missions here that will still take quite a while to get through since some of the islands are quite large, but there is a lot more variance in the mission length this time around, and the ability to start and end at any location of your choosing adds to the variety of each respective run. Another change is crew choice. When you start the game, you have to choose which crew member to revive first. Naturally, this will affect which options you have on a mission. Going forward, the order in which you revive the crew is also entirely up to you. There are a total of 7 crew members to revive in the game, all quite different from each other. So the order in which you choose to revive these people is going to affect your early game team composition, and as a result your team synergy and strategies for every mission are going to change. The previous game would have set team members assigned depending on the level that you were doing, so you didn't really have any choice. However, in Shadow Gambit, aside from the specific story and crew missions which dictate a specific crew member that you're required to have on the mission, you are pretty much free to choose any unlocked crew member to fill the rest of your roster. This leads to the next change. Every time you do a mission, you earn Vigor tokens. These accumulate until you unlock an ability upgrade, which can be used to upgrade a revived crew member special ability. Now, naturally, this improves the ability. Another interesting aspect to this is that crew members who are not taken on missions accumulate one of these points for each mission they are not used on. So switching out crew between missions will net you more of these points. So it sort of encourages you to switch out and try different members of your team and unlock upgrades faster. However, I didn't unlock all 8 upgrades during the course of my playthrough, although it does seem like it's possible. I upgraded 4 of my team's abilities, but the game does continue after you complete the story, and there's plenty left to do afterwards, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Another addition are crew quests and crew tales. The quests are actually missions for each crew member, which take place across the various islands in the game. 3 need to be done in order for the campaign to progress. Crew tales are kind of short narrative experiences that take place on the Red Marley in between missions. They're pretty great and give you even more background on each of your 7 crew members. Some of them are pretty funny. A very nice touch, actually. I loved Toya, the samurai chef's tale. I found that to be pretty hilarious. Your team makeup can, of course, drastically change the way you play, as I've alluded to several times now. Sulady, the ship's doctor, for example, can conjure a bush anywhere that blocks standing line of sight, which allows your crew to hide in them, sneak behind them, and also it causes bodies to disappear. She can cause enemies to walk toward her into ambushes, or once upgraded, away from her. John Mercury can burrow underground and lie in wait and pop up within a radius to take down an enemy and knock them into the ground. Once upgraded, it allows him to pull his teammates underground as well to hide them. Toya, the samurai cook, can whistle to attract enemies to his location, or place his katashiro on the ground, or attach it to an enemy guard, which then allows him to teleport to that location and kill the enemy. Once that's upgraded, it allows him to teleport back to where he was in his last location. There's also a sniper, a cannoneer that can shoot both friendly and enemy units to other locations, a quartermaster who can possess enemies and such, a couple of others as well. I'm not going to talk about all of them here, but needless to say, they're all very different and synergize very differently with each other depending on the combination that you've chosen, which again is going to vary your approach to each mission that you do. My playthrough lasted around 38 hours, somewhat shorter than my Desperados playthrough. My Desperados 3 playthrough at nearly 50 hours, but that was with all the DLC as well. However, after completing the campaign, Shadow Gambit does allow you to continue playing. You can redo any of the campaign missions and try to complete a large number of challenges, or what they call badges in the game, associated with each one of these missions. Each island has its own badges to earn. Every crew member has a host of badges that they can earn from various challenges. And then in addition to this, I still have a bunch of crew missions and crew tales to complete. And at least half of my ability upgrades still need to be unlocked. So to put things into perspective, the game lists my overall completion at 48.5%. And at 85%, you unlock a new character that can actually be used in your team. So there really is a ton of content here. And this should probably keep you busy for quite a while. You know, it's always strange to have such a short section for issues. The only issue I had with the game during my time played was when putting down a view marker eye. What this does is it allows you to see if any enemies can see that particular spot or that particular guard. And I was unable to click on it again to remove it, and it required me essentially to put down another one somewhere else and click on that to remove that before the original one would actually disappear. Performance otherwise was fine. There were no audio or graphical issues that I came across. There were zero game-breaking bugs, crashes, or anything else of the sort. If I really had to nitpick two things, I would say occasionally my crew would move to an unexpected location due to me thinking I was clicking in a certain place, only to find that I wasn't actually clicking in that place and my crew member would go somewhere else because of the camera angle. Or if I would click somewhere up ahead, the AI decided it found a shorter route and then would run through a bunch of enemies, which of course would make me get spotted. Look, these are very minor issues that didn't happen all the time either. And they really just required me to be a little bit more careful and rotating the camera and not clicking too far ahead when moving my team around. So in conclusion, I'll say that Shadow Tactics and Desperado 3 were excellent games. Shadow Gambit, the Cursed Crew, has upped the bar yet again. It's taken the formula that they've so finely honed and improved over time. The characters have more backstory, there are more team customization options than ever before, and a whole lot of replayability here. There really is nothing more satisfying than when a plan comes together in perfect unison, and experimenting with quick loading and trying out different stuff with various approaches and seeing what the different outcomes are never really gets old. And I found it to be continually enjoyable all the way through my time with the game. If you enjoyed Shadow Tactics and Desperados 3, Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew is an absolute must-buy. Possibly their best work yet. If you've never played their previous games, you really should do yourself a favor and go and play them. Seriously, they're really good. And I would absolutely recommend Shadow Gambit to you as well, without hesitation. Anyway, I hope some of you guys found this video helpful. If you do have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the section below. I've been Shaoling. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.